Hi, I'm Brett. I'm currently a master's student over in Hunter for popular culture history, and I went to NYU for undergrad for history and cinema studies. Well, it was definitely a lot of work as a cinema studies history major. There was although it kind of worked out because there was a lot of crossover between the two sometimes. With cinema studies, basically the major was trying to discover the meanings and intentions of the filmmakers, and that usually is looking at films through time and kind of like a little snippet of American, European, or Asian history, depends on what film you were watching. And history, basically, I had to study American and European and a little bit of non-Western history in order to complete the degree. So both of them kind of helped the other in a way. I would say for the history dash film geek in you, it's a good combination. If you're just like a pure history buff, I definitely recommend history. Pure film buff, definitely would recommend cinema studies. Whatever one you feel more passionate about, because you'll be completing work for about 4 years in this major or both majors. So you have to definitely love it in order to really complete everything successfully. Okay. Well, currently I'm a popular culture history master's over at Hunter College. And it's a good combination of history and cinema studies together. I'm sort of going on the professor track, so if you're interested in becoming a professor after doing a history and cinema studies degree, or just history and cinema studies, that's a good way to go to sort of get your name out there, write a good thesis that people will say like, hey, you're the guy who wrote that thing about like propaganda in World War II. We never knew that before. That would be a great way to start. And other people I know from that took history or cinema studies ended up, just moving on and starting their careers. A lot of them became like copywriters. Some of them worked in the film industry. Some people ended up going on to law school because history and cinema studies really give you like the analytical skills necessary in order to do well in the LSATs and to just do well in law school in general, because history, you have to analyze like a lot of primary sources, try and create meaning out of that. And just like with being a lawyer, you have to analyze a lot of old laws and just realize how do they apply today. Same thing goes with cinema studies. You see an older film, you're trying to discern the meaning from it, and your enjoyment from the film will definitely pick up quite a bit, as sort of a side thing. A lot of people like to become copywriters because history and cinema studies are very writing-intensive majors, and copywriting is a great way in order to fulfill your passion in writing, but also get paid for it. Because I know a lot of cinema studies majors ended up like trying to be screenwriters or ended up being television writers, and it's a long, hard road to become a screenwriter, television writer. Sort of break your name out there in this gigantic, this tough field to get into. So copywriting, freelance copywriting in general, is a great way to sort of hone your writing skills after you graduate. And you could use all your creative energies in order to create these interesting campaigns for major corporations. Like if you see like I don't know, like one of those funny Budweiser commercials during the Super Bowl, it's a copywriter that wrote all that. So you can be that guy to say like, hey, I wrote that thing with the dog and the Budweiser or something like that, or the Geico Gecko commercials. Or you can, if you're a history major, you can decide to, you want to work in a museum. You could also write copy for the exhibits. That little description of like the background between this like pencil that was held by Ernest Hemingway at some point, or something like that. Or, you can just end up being an administrative position in a major company if you can't find anything, or you really want to work in a corporation, sort of work yourself up from there. And other people just decide I'm not going to use history of cinema studies. I'm going to do something completely in a different direction, and they just go into the middle of the Pacific and become a deep sea fisherman. So it's whatever you love. The classes you attend at first are typically very big classes, big lecture halls. You don't get to see the professor too much. You more just talk with the TA because they're the one that's going to be grading your paper. You could also visit the professor in office hours, get to know more about the professor's specialties. One of the best big lecture hall classes I took was one of the early ones I took when I was a history major. It was a World War II class, incredibly interesting. The professor, he was over in World War II, I think, from how detailed he was about the experience. And especially after reading so much about World War II beforehand, I thought, you really can learn more from there. But this professor just put it all in this really interesting new light that it was just fantastic to just go there every day and hear his stories. Especially at the end of every class, he'd put a slideshow of everything he talked about in the class, so you get a real visual feel for what you were seeing. For cinema studies, it was pretty much the same thing, just big lecture hall classes at first. And then later on, after probably during sophomore year, if you're advanced enough in the degree, you can get much smaller, 10 to 20 people classes. You basically just talk with the professor. It's more of less of a lecture, more of a discussion group. And you get to basically go off on your readings or just weird tangents. It depends on what happens in class that day. One class I had later on, cinema studies, was a horror class. So we would watch horror films, and then we would discuss, based on the readings we did previously, about said horror film we saw that day, and just discuss what meanings we got from it. Basically, the thing you'll learn in college is that there isn't one true meaning. It's just basically trying to justify your meaning to the professor. And if your meaning sounds good, if it's a good, great argument, then more than likely the professor will probably give you a very good grade on your assignment. So if you're deciding to become a history major, definitely hone up on your AP history courses. Not only will you get the credits to sort of advance quickly to get to the smaller classes, you'll also get a feel what it's like to be in a college-level course. For people that are thinking about cinema studies, I'd recommend more trying to get an extracurricular film club together, so you get in the mood to sort of discuss with your peers about films and just the meaning and symbolism that you feel from films. I know there are some English or history classes that like to incorporate films into their curriculum in high school. So definitely look for those if you get to choose, because those will probably be the best. Even if it's just seeing Romeo and Juliet, the 1960s version again, just watch it and sort of pick up what the filmmaker was trying to do in adapting Romeo and Juliet. That's a lot different than the Shakespearean text.